Welcome, welcome. It's my favorite day, everyone. It is Wednesday, and welcome back to our global webinar series. Today, we are going to dive into when prime is overpriced and secondary is smarter. I love this. I'm Stephanie Gillison, co-founder of Airdomo, and I'm here with my favorite counterpart, Hannah Maverick. It's going to be fun today, like it always is, right, Hannah?
Like it always is. This topic is really cool. It forces us to challenge one of the biggest assumptions in global real estate, and you know this, that prime is automatically smarter. So a lot of buyers do believe that they're being conservative by choosing prime markets, and sometimes they are, but sometimes it's simply paying a premium for familiarity. Basically. So, but it's not about chasing risk. It's about understanding positioning and timing and all the other fundamentals so that your capital works intentionally and not emotionally like it sometimes does. So let's dive in. Stephanie, let's see. When we're talking about what prime actually means, let's define it properly. What does that mean in global real estate?
Well, prime means, the established location, strong historical demand, limited supply, high price per square meter or square foot. If we're talking about the United States, we know square feet, right? International buyer recognition. Think Central London, think Monaco, think Miami Beach, prime Paris, parts of Dubai where you're at, right? Prime markets are usually, they're more mature, they're highly liquid, they're well understood. There's also lower perceived risks, right? They might have lower crime. They might, be known to give a more established government, right? But here's the key: prime also often means fully priced. By the time a location is labeled prime, a significant portion of its upside has already been captured, meaning it's appreciated. It's gotten to that level to where it probably isn't going to maximize that much more. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. So basically, the prime one would protect the capital, but it doesn't always maximize growth.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So when does prime become overpriced?
Well, when pricing disconnects, basically, so that's going to happen when international capital floods in. Media attention drives emotional buying. Like we talked about this. I think I brought this up last week when I talked about how the influencers all drive traffic to one location because it's so cool to hang out, right? That could happen. Yield compresses significantly. Supply increases, but branding remains strong. In some mature markets, rental yields can fall below 3 to 4%. Entry prices could require decades of appreciation to justify that. And if buyers are paying mostly for status and liquidity, well, there's nothing wrong with prime, but you have to ask yourself, am I buying protection? Am I buying for prestige? Or am I buying for performance? Because sometimes prime is just going to be protection. Because sometimes prime, it's just simply expensive.
I understand that, and paying a premium for safety, it's not always wrong. It's maybe something when I think about it is what I would do, but it should be intentional. So let's flip it. What does actually define a secondary market?
All right. So secondary markets, they're less internationally recognized, right? So you might hear about them. You might see that, oh, a resort just opened, but it's not highly popularized, right? It's earlier in their development cycle. It's just starting to see some articles published about it. That way it's priced below established competitors, but it's strengthening quietly. And I love these because, you kind of get in before it's cool, right? And they often have this growing tourism. You might see one of the bigger airlines say, "Oh, we've opened a direct flight to," right? You'll see infrastructure investment. Maybe they're expanding the airport. Maybe they're adding a highway. Maybe they're increasing the expat presence, right? Early development with luxury happening. So secondary does not mean it's unstable. It just means it's a bit early, which is a good thing because it has not appreciated to its highest. So I'm not going to say it means it's it's inexpensive. It just means it's less expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the mistake that buyers make usually is equating those less famous ones with the higher risk, when in reality, some secondary markets are just 5 to 10 years behind on today's prime locations. And that is where timing becomes everything. We see it in Dubai a lot, and actually with all the locations around Dubai that are popping up right now, which are going to be amazing in 5 to 10 years. So excited to see
Absolutely.
how that develops. But let's talk about how the smart buyers identify those mispriced locations.
So
So
they
how
look,
do they,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, go ahead.
Um, I wanted to know, how do the experienced buyers identify when that secondary is smarter?
Well, that's the thing. They're looking for those signals, right? Is infrastructure improving rapidly? Are international brands entering? Are property laws clear and stable? Is demand diversifying beyond tourism? Are prices still significantly below neighboring prime markets? Smart buyers, they ask, if this area continues to strengthen, where could it realistically be in 5 to 10 years, right? We're not betting blindly, but we're identifying mispricing between perception and fundamentals. That's very different from speculation. And these are the markets that I'm really drawn to because you're taking a little bit of a chance, but I think that's the excitement. I've always loved a little bit of a gamble.
And that's why you are so successful. I do have to say that. I love that you said that there could be some clear signs. And I think we've seen this with branded residences, right?
Mhm.
Wherever they pop up is usually where a really, really good market is developing.
That's right. And here's why, because a branded residence is not going to want their name licensed to a failure, right? They're doing market research. So that kind of it's almost like that insurance policy that someone's vetted it a little bit before you. And that company happens to be probably a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100 company that's been around and knows a little bit about hospitality.
Exactly. So it's not really about chasing the unknown. It's about reading the trajectory. And we can do that now with market research, like you said. So let's compare that risk honestly. Where does each carry the risk?
Well, so prime, we talked about this. Prime risk, you might be overpaying at peak cycle, right? You might receive a lower yield on income. You might have slower appreciation or absolutely no appreciation at all because it's already reached its highest potential, right? There might be a higher barrier of entry. Your secondary risks, slower liquidity, regulatory shifts, development delays potentially, market immaturity. Okay. So those are the difference between those. But again, with that secondary risk, that's where that's the risk to gain upside, right? I always tell everyone in business, in sales, you're not going to get ahead unless you take a little bit of risk. But again, when we're talking about, buying anything, there's risks that come along with everything. And so the key difference between the prime markets is prime is going to carry a valuation risk, and secondary markets carry the development risk. And so wealthy buyers are going to decide which type of risk are they more comfortable with.
And both are valid, right? It's just about
Mhm.
alignment.
Yeah.
So that's totally fair. Now, let's talk about, how does the secondary market actually become prime?
Well, it's progression over time. Stage one, undervalued and overlooked. Okay. Stage two, infrastructure and tourism growth. Stage three, developers entering. Stage four, international recognition. Stage 5 is going to be your price acceleration. And then 6, you're going to reach that prime status. So buyers who enter at stages 2 and 3 often capture the strongest upside. And by stage 6, the market is stable, but it's rarely ever going to hit that explosion ever again. So stage 2 and 3, you're on that upward climb. You're like the rocket ship.
That's why the labels matter less than the positioning, right? So let's talk about who should buy prime versus secondary. Who do you think should lean towards prime, and then who should lean towards secondary?
Well, okay, if you need to save your capital, save your money, prime is going to suit you better. Prime is going to suit the ultra high net worth individuals. They don't need to necessarily have any more upside. Buyers that are prioritizing liquidity and those wanting low volatility. Okay. Secondary is going to suit the growth focused investors, buyers with medium term horizons, those comfortable with moderate uncertainty. Look, portfolio builders are going to diversify. We've had an entire webinar on how you diversify countries, how you diversify properties. That's how you get wealthy. That's how the wealthy get wealthy, right? So the smartest portfolios, they're going to tell you got to include both. If that's what you're truly looking to do, you're going to have to include a little bit of both. It's like the stock market. You're going to buy some safe stocks, and then you're going to buy some volatile ones.
That is a whole different webinar, Stephanie, that we're going to talk about. But yes, that balance is really where the real strategy lives. Thank you. By the way, this conversation completely does change how people see those location labels. And for everyone watching, if you are deciding between a prime market and a secondary one, or even wondering whether you're overpaying for the status, we can definitely help you analyze that strategically. And I do want to say, when you go to airdomo.com, please do sign up for the newsletter, because newsletter that goes out, we do cover a lot of these things there as well. And you can see a lot of the recaps from our webinars as well. And of course, explore all the vetted global markets on airdomo.com, or you can reach out for guidance tailored to specifically your goals and your risk profile or non-risk profile. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in the next session.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.